total market. It's the top 10 traded shares. If the basket of top 10 traded shares changes, then the Sensex constitution changes. That sounds like selective cherry picking of facts to present the picture you want to present. That's not an objective reality then. In fact, I think that BSE, somewhere these guys are hoodwinking us. So here's what I think. I think market sentiment is hogwash. Okay? Somebody is moving the market. Okay? Where do the small investor fit into all this? I have clients who say, Luizaf, kaise banane? I say, yeah, sure, I don't mind. Who has the problem making money? Mere company ke 2000 khareed lo. How does he know? He's moving the market. How is he moving the market? That's the question. And this has happened to me not once. I mean, I'm 33 years in this legal profession. People who want to do me a favor come and tell me this. I've been told at least once every 2-3 years by a guy who actually moved the market. Quite common. So, small investor who's sitting on the outside, he has no access to any information. He knows nothing. He can't find out anything. He can't do anything about it. Because if he does something about it, he's screwed for insider trading. But the big guys, the insiders, are trading all the time and it's okay. What is this fundamental based trading? You heard this expression, fundamental based trading? That I only look at the fundamentals of the company, huh? If the company is fundamentally valuable and the asset value is going up and business is going up, then I will invest in it and in the long run it will all work out. That's bullshit. Because what's happening is that promoters, directors, their plans, the truth about the company, all this is not known to you. There's stuff going on that you don't understand. And you're just looking at the surface. And you're basing your fundamentals projection based on that. But those may not be the fundamentals. The truth may be very different. I mean, ask Raju. You guys are punting in Satyam, your asses would have been wiped clean, okay? Fundamentals are good. But that's not the truth. You never know the truth. The accountants never tell the truth. Absolutely right. See that cross there? Even you guys know this. So what are these so-called company fundamentals? There are no fundamentals. What's really going on? You have to ask yourself these questions. Who has the vested interest in moving the market? Why is he moving the market? Who are these guys? Is the promoter planning a capital issue? What happens? Promoter wants to increase his shareholding. Take it from me, there are people in this country who can move the market. They are the same kind of people who can deliver you truckloads of cash in nice new crisp notes anytime you want. Most of them live in Gujarat. I'm going to come back to this topic in a bit. The Gujarati traders are incredible. You go to them, you can make a deal. And you say, I want to do a share buyback. Cash bought, मेरे पास cash बहुत है. I don't want to do dividend, so I'll just buy back my shares. Just drop the price. They'll simply chuck money into the market. They will say, ठीक है, if this is the amount you want, this is the amount you want the price to drop. This is my commission. Cash deliver कर देना next week. Upfront. They're totally honorable. The one thing about the Gujus, they're completely honorable. If they tell you they're going to do it, they do it. दोनों पे भी उसूल होते हैं. So these guys will simply take your cash, move the market. They just do forward trading. And they'll sell and they'll sell and sell. Price starts to crash. You pick it up in small lots. Next morning, price goes back up. That's how it works. So, and here's some other stuff that I've written is pretty much on the same lines. The question is this. Somebody is always moving the market. That's how people make money. 20 bull traders decide, let's take up Reliance today. By evening, it's 1 rupee more expensive. They clear out crores. Next morning, it drops down again. And then you ask yourself, why did it move at all? See, your 2 rupees, 3 rupees, 1 million rupees, nothing. You guys are nobodies, okay? I'm nobody. People like me have nothing. You think you have a fancy car, you're a god, you're nobody. Okay, there are people out here who can talk thousands of crores like it was change. They live outside the check economy. They're dealing with cash. It's a different world. And these guys move the market every day. You can never make money on unknowable unknowns. All trading is insider trading. So what do small investors do? You go looking for tips and tell me, do you know something about this and you know something about that? I'm a lawyer. I work for regarding my clients. My friends are always asking me, "Kuch bata yaar." They're looking for tips. You're punting in the dark. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I may not know the right thing. I may misinform you. Now, let's talk about some scandals. I'll give you a perspective of what actually goes on. Okay, listen, one thing before we start, I'm a big fan of Dhirubhai Ambani. There were all these Bombay group of businessmen who had the stock market by the throat. He changed the whole project financing game. I'm a big fan of his. Don't get me wrong, but here's the Reliance story. Okay? Raju Vasa, Dhirubhai Ambani's physiotherapist. Dhirubhai Ambani, had a stroke, which is like Tera move. Okay? He had a stroke in '86. Why did he have a stroke is another interesting question, because some politicians came after him. But if you want that information, you got to read this book, Ambani and Sons. Fascinating book. Ambani and Sons and the predecessor, which was Polyester Prince. Polyester Prince, I think, is banned in India. But Hamish, I think that was his name, the writer, reproduced the same information in Ambani and Sons. And Mukesh Ambani is too mature to get books banned. He's not going to do that, play that game at all. So, anyway, so Dhirubhai Ambani was so happy with the services, he gave him some shares as a reward. Which you do as promoter quota whenever there's a new rights issue and all that. So in Jan 94, Mr. Raju Vasa sells 25,000 shares and then reports him lost in April 1994. Okay, so the registry promptly issues him duplicate shares, which he sells again. At least that's what appears on the surface. Whether it's true or not is to be seen. Now, the broker who had purchased the first shares, so he submits the shares for transfer. The registry rejects them. Rejecting the second one I can understand, the first I don't. Okay, but it rejects them. Broker goes off to the Bombay Stock Exchange. Who issues the show cause notice? So the registrar saying, why are you declining transfer? Now Reliance immediately puts down a check of 10.8 million shares, 8 million, and asks for the case to be dropped. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why should Reliance care? Some guy sells shares, reports him loss, sells them again, he's a physio. Why should Reliance care? Then, in 1992, another broker purchases 1.5 million shares. Reliance asks them to withdraw the transfer and promise to help them sell the shares somewhere else. Why? In December 1991, UTI, remember UTI, Unit Trust of India? UTI purchases 2.4 million shares and then tries to transfer them. When they are returned, the distinctive numbers have changed. 87,000 of them were those that were sold to Fair Growth. Fair Growth is the company. The original sellers of those shares had been Reliance Group companies. Now, at this point, BSE starts to get very nervous. And there seem to be shares that Reliance doesn't want to be out in the public. They are shares with changed numbers. You give it one set of shares for transfer, a different set of shares come back. There's something going on that's not right. When they start investigating this share switch, at that time Reliance had 10% weightage on the stock exchange, Sensex. The moment, and it had 30% of the daily trades. The moment they start the investigation, Reliance says we are shutting down BSE, we're moving to NSE. National Stock Exchange is still very new. So the country went up in flames, right? What's going on here? Meaning, Reliance is saying, if you investigate us, we are shutting you down. Why should Reliance care? If there's no problem. At this point, BJP is Jaswant Singh. You know him? Erudite guy, I like the way he speaks. Wonderful. He produced Syndicate Bank owned duplicate shares in Parliament. And 27 MPs signed a memorandum claiming that Reliance was creating duplicate shares to pledge them to banks. Meaning if you want to get funds, print some more shares like the Reserve Bank of India prints money, stick them out to a banker, take money. So what happened at the end? Janata Party came to power. So Reliance receives a rap on the knuckles, they pay a penalty of 63 lakhs, 64 lakhs. End of story, no conversation. What was it, what went on, nobody knows. This is how this country ran its stock exchange before dematerialization. Now you know all shares are demat. So it doesn't matter anymore. You may say, hey, this is history, what are we talking about? But this is how the stock market ran for a very long time. Now if you think that magically we have become Snow Whites since we dematted, that's a different time. Now don't go forward. I want to ask the audience, so what's the moral of the story? Look at this slide. What is the moral of the story? Here's my model. The world runs by very different rules from what we are told is how it actually runs. Most of us really have no idea how it runs. And we see these little bits and pieces, and to us that is reality. But most people really don't know. I mean, we are talking about Reliance, I can bring this up. There was a story circulating that Dhirubhai Ambani sponsored that St. Kitts controversy letter, and that whole thing that brought down with Bofors, that brought down the Rajiv Gandhi government. So I don't know if any of this is true. Don't get me wrong. I'm making no such suggestion. All I'm saying is, if it was true, how would you ever know? Who makes this government? Who props up governments? Who pulls them down? What are the deals being made? We don't know. So it's almost like the Matrix. You've seen the movie? We are living in this totally make-believe world where there's all software being downloaded on us with a whole construct that has nothing to do with what's going on out there. And we are living this fantasy land, cuckoo land world. Basically, they've filled us with bullshit. And we are living that as reality. Which doesn't help you to know what reality is. I'm not really. But I'm just telling you there's a problem. Now, I'm not done yet with the stock markets. Between 90 and 92, anybody was born when Harshad Mehta was around? You are too young, huh? You know Harshad Mehta? Okay, Harshad Mehta was a fantastic guy. I don't have the data on him here. I know he lived in a 15,000 square foot penthouse flat in South Bombay, which had a private swimming pool on the 23rd floor or some such thing. Okay?
9-hole golf course. 9-hole golf course.
But short drives at home. Sure. Okay. This guy had fantastic one-liners. He was a bull on the BSC. So when they asked him, what justifies this, he said that India is a turnaround script and I'm bullish on it. Those kind of filmy lines. He was a great guy. He was a media darling. Everybody loved him. What he did was he used interbank, ready forward, secured short-term loans. Banks give each other loans, right?
Yes, sir.
How do they do it? They do it on something called a receipt. The receipt is proof that the loan was given. Right? So he used these, which are basically issued against government securities, to fund a bull run on the stock market. Here are the facts. He persuaded the Bank of Karad and the Metropolitan Cooperative Bank to issue bank receipts for a fee. These fake BRs he used to collaterally secure loans from other banks. He then used that money from those banks to drive up share prices. You keep buying, the prices will rise because, as somebody observed, I think you were, the demand exceeds supply. Yeah. So Times of India broke the story. Prices crashed. Banks were left holding 4,000 crores of VRs. One man. I can't remember how many small investors committed suicide, but it wasn't two. There was a lot of them. They jumped off buildings, they burnt themselves. The chairman of Vyasa Bank jumped off the building and died. Chairman. It's a nationalized bank. Very powerful man. Why? Mehta was charged with 72 criminal offences. He defended 600 civil cases and died of heart failure in December 2001. There are two morals of the story. I've written one here. One is, if you have enough ready cash, you can always move the market. The second moral of the story is, don't get too big for your boots. Move the market a little, make a little money, keep your mouth shut, keep a low profile, you're okay. You get really big, somebody will take you down. So then some journalist will start figuring out who you really are, because you're worth taking down. The little scamster is not worth taking down. You know, people tell me never file an income tax return. Honestly, always file it about 1 crore. Ask me why? Because my income is 1.1 crores. The threshold to come after you with a hatchet is 1 crore. If you are below that, you're not worth fighting for. So even if your income is 200 crore or whatever, I don't know. I mean, I never have those incomes, but even if it's those kind of numbers, the tax authorities will look at you for what you declare, not for what you are. So you want to move the markets, do small jobs, you'll get away with it forever. That's the theory. Now, who remembers Ketan Parekh? You were still not born. Damn, this is any history, huh? So, 10 years later on speech day, March 1st, 2001, stock markets crash. If I recall correctly, the speech was being made by one of my lawyer brothers, Chidambaram, wasn't it? He makes a budget speech, the market crashes. Okay. We just hate lawyers, right? 8 small investors committed suicide. So if you're a small investor, personally, I would not bet on you staying alive too long. Allow it to commit suicide. Ketan Parekh picks up 10 low liquidity stocks. Why low liquidity? Because he can drive up prices with very little funds. So he purchases these shares cheaply. I lost a P there. Purchase. Okay. He purchases the shares cheaply. He pledges the shares to banks. He uses the loans to buy more shares. Then he pledges those shares. Then he buys more. And so on till he whips up prices to unbelievable levels. Okay. And he does it over a 6-7 month period. Then, second thing he does is, this Ahmedabad-based Madhavapura Mercantile Cooperative Bank issues pay orders against checks. Ketan Parekh gives checks to a bank and says, "Bhai, ek mahine mein cash kar." Against that, they issue a pay order. Pay order is, pay order like a bank robbery. Yeah, they issue a pay order. He then discounts a pay order with a second bank. He gets cash, which he gives to KB Group companies. Now, these KB Group companies become purchasers of merchants. Money for nothing, chicks for free, right?
Trophy.
Now, 16 Ketan Parekh Group companies borrow 1.2 billion from MMCB in Mumbai between Jan and March 2001. Eventually, other brokers say, given the piece of the action, they started doing the same. So everybody started replicating the same technology. Before it was over, there were 20 or 30 brokers who were basically doing whatever KP was doing under directions from Ketan Parekh. The Bank of India complained. At that point, K10 shares lost 67% of value in 60 days. You commit suicide here if you walk your house to do this. But he went free, huh? He spent 1 year in jail, that's all. He didn't die. This is the part that bothers me more. That's like being gated, right? Your daddy caught you smoking, so he gated you and said 1 week you can't go out. That's what this guy got, 1 year in jail. So now you know, if you really, really overdo it, you get 1 year in jail. So when you guys get out into the real world and you become stockbrokers, yeah, you know what to do. Now, what's happening right now in the stock market today? This is happening now. I've been approached to advise on some of these cases. Suppose your name is, it's all Infotech, right? So let's think of some nice mythological Infotech names like Indra Lakshmi Infotech or Dhritarashtra Data Analytics. Yeah? Or Sugriv Software. Sanskritized names go. It's flavor of the month. So, and you go into an IPO. Who's going to buy? Are you buying Sugriv Software? Huh? Some guy, what did he do last? He ran a pan shop. Okay, opposite Moti Mahal. He made lots of money because after you had some kebab, you've got to have a pan. So then he started a software company. This is not unusual, it's all over the country. Now you can admire it and you can say, ah, kya enterprise hai, fantastic. Or you can say that, boss, he's running one scam or he's running another. This is your perception. Thank you. So, if you come out the market like that, nobody wants to buy you. Non-starter. What you do is you go to Gujarat. You can also go to Calcutta. Yeah, I forgot to mention Calcutta. You can also go to Calcutta. And they will guarantee that you will have an oversubscribed issue, but they want a commission upfront in cash. Okay? The commission is as low as 10%, it's as high as 50%. 50%, meaning 100 crore issue, they want 50 crores. Those guys are players, huh? Now, if you had the money in the first place, why would you need an investor? Why would you need to go public? You had 50 crores. Now you got to find 50 crores first to get 100 crores. How do you do it? Intercorporate deposit. No, logo say. And say the moment the IPO is through, I'll return your money. But if you show it in your books of accounts, and your share price crashes because this company has too much debt, correct? You can't show it. So IPOs begin with a fraud. You take a loan, you don't disclose it in your accounts, you file false accounts with the red herring prospectus at the time of the IPO. So already you are now in the illegal grey world. And then when you get back the money, you have to pull out 50 crores of cash and compensate the people you took the cash from. Which means that your company is going to be awash with fake payments, with bills that don't represent anything real. Yeah? Which means your balance sheets are going to be toxic and fraudulent in the Raju style. For the next several years, did you clean it up? And Raju's problem was he could never clean it up. He wasn't saying that, I did this. Oh, by the way, let's stop and talk about Raju. Why did Raju need to do this? Here's my speculation. He picked up a lot of infrastructure projects very quickly, right? He needed the money to pay somebody off. So Raju wasn't faking his accounts because he was eating more tandoori chicken and he could put it in the books. He was faking it because he was paying somebody off for all those projects that were awarded. So anyway, back to the topic. This we've already discussed. Now what do these brokers do? They have hundreds of bank accounts across hundreds of branches. With names like Ramesh Kesar, Ramesh Shah, R.K. Shah, R. Patel, Ram Patel, Raj Patel, Kumar Patel, like a dhaba, Kalidal, Pilidal, Alu Butter, Alu Puri, Alu Rice. All this stuff going on, and they'll file all these applications for allotments of shares. And the shares surely is oversubscribed. Now nobody knows where they get their money from. I've often asked this question, where do the brokers get their money? They've got 50 crores, yeah, but they have to generate 100 crores. Where do they get the other 50 crores from? Nobody knows. This is a closed shop. Only those guys know. And then The moment it's oversubscribed, it lists and it goes shooting up. It goes shooting up, they buy some more. Then poor jokers like me, who never got any shares allotted, we applied for 100, we got 5. We say, "Yeah, secondary market mein khareed hai." So we buy 100 more. 2 days later, the price crashes, they've exited. And you are left holding the baby. Your lambs for the slaughter, boss, you're dead. That's how it works. It's people like you who get screwed. That's the stock market for you. There will be blood, you will get burned. Now, how do you do this? Many of my clients who are listed get attacked on the stock market every couple of years. How does this work? Suddenly you find that your price is crashing because the rumor mill going on. This company has problems. Price starts going down. You don't know who's making the rumors. Then you try to find out. Okay, and this is how it works. First, you put together a broker gang. All you need is a few hundred crores. And you guys probably think a few hundred crores is a lot of money. It is for me, but let me tell you, for a lot of people, it's not. It just sits under their beds, okay, in little suitcases. And you pick a bum of the month. A low liquidity company is a great one for a bum of the month, but it doesn't matter. Forget about all that. You just make a credible list of allegations. In this country, everybody believes every allegation because there's no smoke without fire. Right? You believe anything. And in fact, the more outrageous your allegation, the more you believe. In fact, some of the allegations I'm making, you're believing them too, just between you and me and the dollar. So, now you open a plethora of fake bank email accounts. And you start sending anonymous emails to everybody, making these allegations. You start circulating them widely. People will start talking. So with our love for conspiracy, a rumor mill begins. At this point, when the rumor mill has made good progress, what you do is you take a short position on the stock market. What you need is really two things: print media and TV. Print media is easy to get. TV is even more fun. So many TV news channels, all desperate to have something to talk about. I have been told about this. There was a road being built right between Gurgaon and Delhi, and some journalists were called and said, journalists said, look, it's very simple. Workshop says, just tire leke aao. Just burn the tires, I'll shoot the video, you'll have your solution. Next morning was this huge report of outraged villagers on a burning rampage. Actually, it was 4 tires. That's what you do. And you can then end up with such a huge belief in the market that something is seriously wrong that the price starts to drop. And TV is great. You believe anything you see on TV. Something about the visual media is highly credible. Then you can purchase a question in Parliament. You guys were born when there was this disclosure about questions being purchased in Parliament? Of course you were, hardly 5-6 years back. MPs were being paid to ask questions in Parliament. Now, उस company के बारे में आपको पता है? What does the government have to say about it? What does the government say? The moment you ask a question in Parliament, the minister will stand up and say, I will institute an inquiry. हाँ भाई, Department of Company Affairs inquiry कर दो. Show cause notice gets issued. Why? Because somebody started an email rumor mill. The prices are gone. They're half. The moment this happens, you square your position. Couple of thousand small investors who believe in fundamentals-based trading have all lost their money. That's what happens. KP and Harshad Mehta use banks. Today, you can use media. The result is the same. You're making the market. You're breaking the market. There is no such thing as a natural market. So I'm going to give you my conclusion. This should actually have some music. The stock market is an elaborate device controlled by a clutch of financial wizards and brokers who fraudulently transfer wealth from millions of victims, euphemistically called small investors, to stockbrokers, industrialists, and professional financial jugglers. This is what the stock market is. It's a mechanism to take your money and give it to other guys. And to make you willingly part with your money, they have to make you believe that there's something in it for you. Actually, you are the fall guy. You know the concept of the fall guy in American gangster films? There's a guy who has to take the bullet, but it's shown that it's for someone else. You're the fall guy. You fall, basically. So, we'll bring me to Warren Buffett. Who's a fan of Warren Buffett? Every market has a fool. If you don't know who the fool in the market is, it's probably you. Absolutely right. Small investors are all fools. Sooner or later, they're screwed. Bitcoin? Timing is okay or am I behind?
A little bit.
10 behind?
10 minutes.
Okay, I need to speed up, guys. Okay, that takes us to auditors. You're going to meet a lot of auditors if you're going to do business. In Jan 2009, Ramalinga Raju admitted that he had cheated 6 million Satyam shareholders through a 14,000 crore accounting fraud. You remember this one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. What a guy. He admitted that his balance sheet as of September 30th, 2008 had non-existent cash and bank balance of 5,040 crores. Non-existent accrued interest of 376 crores. We are talking serious money here, guys. Okay? Understated liabilities of 1230 crores. We're not talking chicken shit here. An overstated debtors position of 490 crores. Okay, wow. And he also, of course, used dummy accounts to trade in Satyam shares. That's what promoters do, right? Just trade in their own shares because they are the ultimate insiders. Now, this is the part I love the most. Satyam got the Golden Peacock Global Award for Corporate Governance in 2008 by the Institute of Directors. Guess who did the independent evaluation? Ernst & Young. Okay? They awarded the Entrepreneur of the Year award to Raju in 2007. If you guys see your Filmfare awards and your Cine awards and all that, you'll know this. The guy who's paying for the award, his daddy and his uncle and his movie is also getting the best prize. Have you seen this? Lifetime Achievement Award to Jatinder, Greatest Achievement Award to his daughter, what is it, some Balaji films. And all of that. And who's paying for the show? Balaji films. So anyway, so board members, now the more interesting thing is, by board members say, you have a public company, आपका income tax department है, PricewaterhouseCoopers आपके auditor है, nobody knew. These crores and crores and hundreds of crores, thousands of crores, nobody knew. How can that be? And by the way, many years have passed. Have you received your answers? How can it be? Don't have an answer now. They don't want you to have an answer. What is the auditor's job? Everybody says you put two auditors in jail. What are those two PwC guys? Nice suits. Put them in jail. What's his job? This is still the case, okay, that governs on the law on this point. It's called Trishaw India versus A.F. Ferguson and Company. This is what the Bombay High Court said. It is directors of a company who are primarily responsible for the preparation of the annual accounts and for the information contained in it. The auditor does not conduct the audit with the objective of discovering all fraud. Such an audit would have to involve a detailed and minute examination of all the books, records, and other documents of the company. And the cost of doing so would be prohibitive and disproportionate to the benefit which may be derived by the shareholder. Yeah, you lose 5,000 crores there and 4,000 crores there. But benefit to the shareholder is disproportionate. Wow. That's the job of an auditor. He has to do nothing. What he has to do is eat kakori kebabs in his working lunch. Auditor, I some chai white cheap India. Okay. But that is a negative. Now the positive is, what is the auditor's job? The auditor's job, he is not bound to do more than exercise reasonable care and skill in making inquiries and investigations. He is not an insurer. He does not guarantee that the books do correctly show the true position of the company's affairs. He does not even guarantee that his balance sheet is accurate according to the books of the company. Then what the is he doing? What it actually means is he does two things. He looks at pieces of paper that the company has created and he creates more papers. And he takes numbers from there, puts them there. Then he takes numbers from there and puts them there. Then he says a double entry balance for me and he creates a nice concise statement and sticks it to you. That's what he does. Okay? And he does one more thing, which is important. He tries to make sure that systems are being followed. So do they have adequate safeguards? If they do, on paper, then he will see that they are followed on paper. It's not his job to go and actually find out that anybody follow these systems. So if you write a nice manual, that's quite good enough for it. Question is, who discovers accounting fraud? You are a public shareholder. Who is going to tell you about the accounting fraud? He's not doing it, it's not his job. Short Tamil answer, illepo, nobody. It's all illepo. Koi nahi karne wala. Your money is basically, you give your money to somebody with no assurance of what's going on with it. It's gone. It's gone. Comes back. It comes back. Guys have a lot of faith here. This is a triumph of faith over common sense. That's my belief. Now, what are the accounting frauds that I have seen in 33 years as a lawyer? And this is not something I found once, every day. First, inventory scam. Companies claim to have raw materials, finished goods, intermediate goods in stock, but actually it's junk. Auditors will tell you they have not reconciled inventories. Now, reconciliation, meaning I don't know what's up there. The company claims it's gold. Actually, it's all junk. What is the defense? This is a national level company. Their inventory is located in 40 places. Now, working conditions there are very bad. There is no electricity also. How can I do reconciliation? I remember once working for the air conditioner company. And the foreign owner said, something is wrong. You have to do, I don't want it done internally, I don't want it done by auditor. Because the auditor is going to defend his position, right? Okay, get an external law firm to do it. So I did it. So I had to go to a place called Kashti and Calcutta. Anybody knows it? Kashti and Calcutta, there are no roads. Okay, forget about it. What they've got is tanneries. So it smells wonderful with all the dead animals. Smell is just outstanding. And we got in there, electricity to bhul jao. I mean, kerosene oil, beta to maa gaye kind of thing. So we get up out there, we lined up in suits, pehle to coat utre with kameeze utri. Next day we were there all wearing shorts. Climbing up and over these hundreds and thousands of cartons lying around, and we're climbing up and over these and counting the air conditioners. And the numbers that were stated were actually just totally different. So what happened next month? But before we got to the next go down, there was a fire in the go down. How many companies get fires in their go downs? They never get it in the MD's office. Think about it. So, then there are pre-book sales. What is pre-booking of sales? Companies inflate the quantities of goods ordered by and being shipped to customers. What does that mean? That in this year, on 31st March, you sold 10 cars, but you actually showed 15. How do you do it? You pre-book it. Because you don't have to file the accounts till September. You show that because most companies are on accrued basis, it is not on a cash basis, only small businesses mainly run on cash basis. So you show that I sold the car, I just didn't deliver it, I never got paid for it. Or you didn't get paid for it, you did not deliver it, you didn't even manufacture it. Order आ गया था customer को, you go to your friend and मेरा 5 order sign कर देना यार. Is that something I did? Is that something I said? I can carry on, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what is the auditor going to say? The auditor says, what do you want me to do? Check with each customer if you placed an order on 30th March or 1st April? There's nothing I can do about it. So you can lie all you like, no problem. There's no one to stop you. Warranty return scam. You produce junk, it doesn't sell, it comes back, don't show it. Say it's out. These are outstanding. Market में माल पड़ा है, दिख जाएगा था, outstanding. What will the auditor say? We have not reconciled warranty returns. Then what happens to, by the way, the outstanding? Because the stuff is already back. After 3 years, you can declare it a bad debt. Now, कौन litigate करता है? You know Indian courts. So you don't litigate either. Defenses, same logistics, reconciliation as inventory. The thing is that, you know, these things are good for everyone. I mean, think about it. If you have too high sales, too low warranty rejects, the shareholder loves it. Stock market is high. Lenders love it. The loans they have given are more secure. Promoter loves it. His share price is higher. Who's interested in dropping the valuation of the company? No one. So there's a grand conspiracy of lying to talk up stuff beyond what it's worth, which is also the allegation against DLF. Bad debt scam, I've already mentioned this. Companies don't show recoveries. Receivables are received. Now this is the other one. The receivables are received in cash and misappropriated promptly, and then a bad debt is declared. In fact, if you have to pay someone off, how do you generate cash? In this country, everybody is paying somebody off, right? Oh no, you guys are nice, idealist young people, and you don't believe nobody pays anybody off. There are no political payments in this country. How many people believe there are no political payments in this country? How many people believe there are political payments in this country? You are neutral. You just don't want to commit yourself to it. Okay. So, the defense here is that asking for data confirmation is not possible. There are 10,000 debtors. 3 साल के लिए every year you chase them and ask for data confirmation, so we haven't asked. Actually, when he came back, it was misappropriate, went off to meet some Magan Lal, Chagan Lal, Ram Lal, Kishan Lal, some fellow. And that is your problem with India, democracy tax. In India, we have a real problem. How do you fund a democracy? We are struggling with this. There's a lot of other stuff. And I don't know if I have a slide on this, I can't remember, but I'll talk about it now. The truth is, we are struggling in this country because we have not found a legitimate way to fund our democracy. I can't simply go and sign a check off for a politician and expect that politician to have any credibility or me to have any credibility. And I think I mentioned this last time. Who is San Singh Chitwal? He was the biggest Indian funder for Mrs. Hillary Clinton, right? There was no problem. He sets up a benefit dinner. Everybody wants to eat dinner. Please have a $5,000 plate. $5,000 contribute karo. Come, have dinner. We'll have you shake hands. Get yourself photographed. Nicely with the lady. You go home. You think that you will pay, which of you, who among you is going to pay $5,000 to be photographed with Hillary Clinton? I mean, I'm not talking about Madonna, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton. Or Lady Gaga. You want something back in return, right? Something's going to come back to you. But Americans don't have a problem with that. They understand that if you pay a politician, you get something back. They just don't talk about it. We seem to get very moralist about it. We want our politicians to work for a song. We want them to make us rich without becoming rich. So we have not established a proper legitimate way to fund democracy. So what happens then? Then they have to find ways to fund. We know, and then there's a limit on the amount of money they can spend in an election, and ridiculous sum in terms of money. The limits are just crazy low. So then they have to work with cash. And that's where it starts. I'm not saying that's where it ends, that's where it starts. Once you get into this whole rhythm of cash, jahan 10 hai, to wahan 20 hai, wahan 50 hai, and then you carry on and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you start selling jobs. I mean, most government jobs are purchased. Go to a tourist bangla. Ask the guy, are you a good cook? How did you get